Welcome to another episode of the Supermarketers Podcast. I'm your host, Gen Furukawa, and today we have Pam Didner, who is an AI strategist, author, trainer, expert. Pam, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I really would not call myself AI expert. Like everybody, I'm always learning and I do a lot of training and workshop, like you said. But I have discovered a lot of time I learned from my audience as much as they learn from me. So, nowadays is really everybody's on that learning curve. Would you
That
say?
is true. That is true. I don't want to overpromise because you're right. I think like that level of humility, that beginner's mindset is so critical now because things are changing so fast.
So
Nobody really
fast.
is an expert.
Yeah.
However, with
Mhm.
that said, you are a trainer. So you go
Yes.
into enterprises, medium-sized businesses, and you train marketers on how to use AI within the constraints of what the enterprise or the organization has.
Yeah.
So I'd love to learn more about that process. I think that whether it is an enterprise or a startup, a solopreneur, there is this challenge of how do I actually get the adoption? Like we know what the capabilities are, but how do we actually get people on the team to use the tools and use them in a way that is synchronous across the team so that we get people to level up? So can
Yeah.
you just walk through that process, how you go in, how you assess the problems, how you assess the opportunities, and then the work that you're doing?
Yeah, great question. So you brought a very important a challenge that many organizations run into, and I would say more so with the mid-sized company and also the enterprises like a Fortune 1000 company. And as you see, that the adoption rate for AI it varies actually from industry to industry, actually also from companies to company. And of course, you are in the tech segment and you talk to a lot of SaaS founders and working with a lot of startups. So the pace is obviously so much faster in the tech segment. But in other industries, such as manufacturing, such as supply chain, such as healthcare, such as financial industries, especially the bigger enterprises that's heavily regulated or heavy rigorous security requirements, the AI adoption is not as fast as what you see in the tech segment. And that has a lot of reasons. Sometimes is they have the any kind of tools that needs to be implemented within the company so thoroughly, needs to pass a lot of security and compliance, and that takes time to get validated and also approved. And the other reason is and how easy is that tool. Many enterprises are actually limited to use Copilot, unfortunately. Well, should I say that? Well, because Copilot is embedded into a lot of Microsoft Office suites. So the way that of using it is very different than a standalone application such as ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini, if you will. So and you have to kind of think it through. And as you know, I'm not trying to say anything negative about Microsoft, but sometimes the tool is not very intuitive. So what we have noticed is the adoption rate, especially within enterprise and the different industries, and it's a mix. Some of the users move very fast, some of them actually move a little slower, and some of them don't even bother to use them. So the percentage is a mix. So a lot of management will say, okay, we need to get everybody, just like you said, moving at the same pace and to try to be effective. And I think a lot of times training becomes an essential part of AI adoption, and that's what I do.
For sure. So I'm actually not that familiar with Microsoft Copilot, but can we just assume that maybe like the outputs are a little bit different?
Yeah,
I personally like Claude and have moved all my work
yeah,
to using Claude.
yeah.
But in terms of like now we're getting tactical,
Sure.
you're working with marketers and assume that they're using Copilot and it's given these constraints of being in the tool, so in
Yeah.
Word, in
Mhm.
PowerPoint, in Excel.
So, yeah.
Now what? Like how are you kind of like helping these marketers level up?
Very good question. So in general, I always tell marketers there's two options, a way to actually approach Copilot. They can access Copilot, basically Copilot as an application of Sales, which is on the cloud. They can also use Copilot with inside of Teams inside of Outlook, inside of a PowerPoint and Excel. So there's always a button, and basically you can click on that button, Copilot, and then a screen will show up, and then you can interact with the Copilot. So the first things that I tend to tell my customers is understand what are your licenses are. So there are multiple different tiers of license actually on the Copilot. In general, there are two. One is called Copilot Chat, and the other one is called Microsoft 365 Copilot. So because the different licenses actually have a different features that you can access to it. So understand the license and also feature is number one. Number two is just basically understand all the features on the Copilot. So if you do use a ChatGPT, on ChatGPT they have the left-hand channels, like they have a codex, they have agent, they have a chat, they have everything. So you kind of understand in terms of for each features what they will do. So same thing on Copilot. You need to understand in terms of a Copilot what are the features, where are they different. A lot of time I have to tell everyone it's very similar. Okay, that you can create agent also in Copilot if you actually have a specific license associated with it. But there are some tips and tricks that you need to know the differences. So that's one. Is when you're using Copilot on the web, it's very similar to what you use on ChatGPT. A lot of time, a lot of users, they don't even know how to write prompts very effectively. One of the hack is they actually have a prompt coach. So make sure you launch the prompt coach and you write your general prompt, and the prompt coach will give you a proper examples. So that's usually a way to go about doing it. And then the next level is if you have a general questions, you use the Copilot on the cloud, kind of like on the cloud, just like how you use Claude. And that's fine. But a lot of time, many of the users, they use Office 300 and 365 application extensively. Like they will reply emails actually on Outlook. So in that case, I always encourage people observe how you use your Outlook. You use your Outlook to summarize, and you read the email, and then you reply email. Then you know what? Then just use Copilot to help you to reply email. Use
Right.
Copilot to help you draft email. Use Copilot to summarize a chain of email that from 50 people. Right. So try to incorporate Copilot into how you use, how you do your jobs.
Right.
That's another way I encourage people. A lot of people don't think that way, but once you tell them that, they say, "Oh, okay, I can do that."
Yeah. Last summer, there was a Forbes study, and I think it was a relatively small sample size.
Sure.
And the headline, the big takeaway was 95% of enterprises don't see positive ROI on their AI
AI.
implementation. And I think that's kind of like this narrative that might be growing or not. And an example of like, say, hey, use Copilot to help write an email. That probably might not fall into like increasing an ROI, might be like a time saver or
I would say
efficiency.
it's time saver. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you identify like, because you personally as a trainer, you need to justify that I am going to go in, I'm going to level up everybody on this enterprise team, and they will output this much more, or they will increase revenue, cut savings, whatever it is.
Totally.
But if you're training for that 5% to have a positive ROI, can you walk me through maybe some frameworks or questions that you're asking so that you can have them help identify the workflows that they need to work on, or where Copilot can actually, really make a big impactful difference?
So, there are two questions I want to address. Number one is ROI. Okay, how do you actually quantify ROI with the enterprise environment? And the other one you are asking is you looking at, that's assume that we are looking from efficiencies perspective. How will that improve the workflow, or how does the workflow needs to change? Is that okay? So can I
Yeah,
answer
yeah, yeah.
those two questions? And for the ROI, it's very hard at the enterprise level. I'm just being very honest to actually tie AI with the revenue generation. Unless you are using AI in terms of like the AI bot is work very closely with your sales, and the AI bot is actually working with your sales. It's almost like optimize your sales engagement and accelerate the sales conversion closure. I'm very specific now.
Yeah.
So to quantify the revenue impact is much harder using AI unless it's very closely tied with the sales. Okay. So with that being said, yes, we can measure that, but it does take time to build that workflow and to build actually a process to quantify that. So most of the time is on efficiency and effectiveness, especially productivities, right? So how do you measure the productivities? There are two ways from my perspective you can go about it. Number one is the IT, because you buy licenses. And so there's a dashboard that you can track, like everybody using the licenses that are being assigned to them. And they can also track in terms of how much time they actually use. So that usually being the first indicator to show like, okay, I spend money to buy those licenses. Guess what? The money is worth it. Everybody's using it on a daily basis. Okay, that's one indicator. The other indicator is basically more um, qualitative. You will hear in the hallway or like conversation or formal survey that people will say, oh my God, I'm using Copilot. It's really helping me, save me a lot of time. Oh, I'm using Copilot in the past. I have to type the meeting minutes myself. Now it's literally, they will just compile the meeting minutes. I can send it. So in the past, I have to do like 25 minutes to write meeting minutes. Now it's like 5 seconds, right? So that is more kind of like informal, qualitative type of feedback. And I personally think, in addition to like you track the usage, you also need to kind of understand the feedback, like directly from your employees, what they say about it. And gathering that feedback sometimes is very hard to quantify it, but it's a validation in terms of people are using or not. So from my perspective, that kind of formal feedback to me is even more powerful than quantitative feedback.
Yeah.
The second thing on the workflow part of it is kind of interesting. There's no standard way to actually look at workflow, because workflow can be done at the individual level. Like you have a workflow to do your job. You have the workflow to actually start a podcast, and then also maybe have an agent to edit your podcast. You have agent to come up with a podcast title and the description, right? Maybe you'll have a workflow. So there's AI workflow at the individual level. There's also AI workflow people can evaluate at the team level. Does that make sense? So when people are talking about workflow, especially at enterprise level, it's a little bit more complicated because they have a lot of legacy systems they have to think it through. And they have to make sure like data transfer from one point to another doesn't break.
Yeah.
Yeah. So most of the time, I tend to make it, I'm trying to simplify in terms of workflow that look at the individual level. For example, you have to create content. Fine. So can you start from the time that you research the content until you create the first draft, until you finalize the draft, until the image selection, until you publish like a social media post? So these are the 5 steps. Is it possible we can look at each step when AI can actually help you? Right? So if you look at that workflow, the AI can probably help you. Like you can either create agent to do it, or you can have human to do certain part and then your agent to do certain part, or you can automate the prompt to do a certain part and human take certain part. But the ultimate vision is that whole things I'm talking about can be done by AI with a minimal human intervention. But a lot of time that even with that, achieving that at the individual level sometimes is much harder than we think. So that's what people tend to focus on right now, is at the individual level of a workflow instead of a team level.
Right. And then individually, it aggregates into overall increased productivity or efficiency.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But one area that you are working on in terms of directly adding value or helping these enterprises is increasing their visibility in large language models. So
Yeah.
answer engine optimization, generative engine optimization.
Yeah.
What are you seeing here in terms of maybe what's working at the moment? Granted, things are moving very quickly. And then also like, what is your approach? How are you
Yeah.
thinking about this or doing your analysis and identifying opportunities to increase visibility or citations?
Oh my God. This is such a loaded topic. So I want to talk about this as my own journey and also how my recommendation for enterprises. So again, I want to break down as a two tiers, if you will. So I've been working for my AEO since July 2025. Okay. It has been a journey for me, absolutely a journey. And can I share my screen if that's okay with you?
Absolutely, yeah, please.
And I just want to share with everyone in terms of what I'm doing, and then I can talk about my recommendation actually for some of my clients. I'm not necessarily actively involved, but I have a lot of point. I have a strong point of view in terms of what they need to do, but they usually have agencies doing that. So most of the time is I provide recommendation and I take it from there. So
Yeah.
that sound
Yeah,
good?
yeah, yeah.
So I'm going to share my screen very quickly and the entire screen. And let's see. Okay, I'm sharing this. Okay. 1 second. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I see your website. Yeah.
Okay, very good. So this is my website, everybody. This is my website. And I've been working so hard to AEO the heck out of my site. Everyone. And for me, I think video is very important. I actually added a little video here so people can actually see me if they choose to. And I'm gonna close this for the time being. But if you can also listen. And this is actually a shorts from YouTube. And like I said, it just add a little point of view and it show me that I'm a speaker, I'm a trainer. And the key things I want to share with everybody, if you are a small company, you are doing this, the most important things that you have to do first is your services. Okay. So in the past, I have 9 service pages and they are very much keyword driven, right? So I create a service page for content marketing. I create a page actually for marketing planning. I create a page for sales enablement, right? So that was more SEO and the keyword driven. So for AEO, I think a little bit differently because a lot of time AI is very logical and they are looking for a very coherent and short answers because a lot of time you ask the Claude or even ChatGPT and you ask specific answer and then AI will crawl the whole internet and then just find kind of like a solution or answer, hopefully snackable and digestible and short answer for your prompt questions. So I structure it in a way that the category is a category. What kind of categories I offer and also what are the detailed services that I provide. So it's very important from my perspective as a SaaS-based platform or any kind of a startup, you are very clear about your product and services that you offer. If you offer a lot, categorize them in a very logical manner. Okay, so that's one thing I actually changed because I'm a speaker and I want to showcase my thought leadership. And so how do I showcase my thought leadership? And there's a couple things I add. Number one, things I separated keynote and the training and workshop, right? So in the past, I have one page, so one keynote page and one training and one keynote and the training workshop page, just one combined, because I feel like that's easier for people to understand. But for AI, I want to show AI that I'm a keynote speaker. I'm also a trainer. So I create a separate page for AI to understand that. That makes sense. So you have to think in terms of, okay, if you have a specific product, if this product can be combined into one page, or this product needs to be explained at 2 separate pages so the AI can understand. I also want to let AI know I'm experienced and seasoned speaker. So I added a past event. This was never added in the past. So I've been speaking since 2012. So I didn't go back to 2012, but I added enough information to show like AI. You know what? I have a sense. I'm a thought leader. I speak to a lot of events, and you can see it. Do you see it? So depending on what you want to do, like your product, has your product won a lot of awards, or your product been mentioned by a major media outlet, what are the information that you want to show the thought leadership of your product or your brand? For me specifically, past event is just a testimonial to substantiate that, guess what, I am expert at speaking at specific topics. The other thing I did is FAQ, and this is kind of very important. Like for example, I know that the crawl, the LLM, they have to crawl the whole internet to find answers. So if I when I look at FAQ, I'm very specific based on what the services I provide. What type of most common FAQs people tend to ask in relationship to my offering. Do you see where I'm coming from, everyone? You have to think it through. Like when you create FAQ, in addition to what is your product, what do you offer, you also have to think about what are the common questions people tend to ask in relationship to your products and services. So I did that. And we carefully curated like several topics, AI strategy and workshop, because I do a lot of workshop training. I do AI strategy, right? So this is obviously curated specifically for AEO. Keynote speaking, again, that's related. GTM, go to market, ABM, sales enablement, and the strategic planning and fractional leadership. So you can see that I'm very specific and curated very, very carefully related to the services that I offer. And another thing we add is a media, which is, like I said, the present media. In the past, I did not have this. So I talk about, like for example, if I've been interviewed by you, I would love to add it right here that, like interviews, right? So, but I have a publication where I've been mentioned and some of the words. Again, why am I doing that? It's purely for thought leadership, right? So there are two things, AI visibility and the AI authority. And what I'm doing right here is add additional weight so AI can see that I am a thought leader. So is that helpful? Like I know it is
Yeah.
kind of long, and I'm gonna stop sharing.
Yeah.
But this is just an example to share with everybody in terms of what I've been doing since July last year. It's so much work, so much work. I mean, it's almost like I cry. I cry.
Totally.
It's a lot of work. And then I share my personal journey, what I'm doing with my enterprise customers as well. I want them to think about their services offering a little bit differently. How can they categorize it much more clear that AI can understand? And also, how can they add FAQ? Because some of the enterprises have very complex products. What can they do to actually do that? The other thing is, in the past, a lot of websites will tell you, make it short, make it snappy, not a lot of copy on your website. You know what? That is going to change. With AEO, you have to make it's okay to add more words, but be very clear about it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Those are great examples. I have two questions. One is how you're doing like keyword research, so to speak, or positioning. Like, is there a particular prompt that you're trying to show up for? Like
Yes.
Pam Didner,
Pam
the
Didner,
yeah.
yeah. So you are totally right. So for the AEO, the couple things I had done when I started back in July is I actually, I instead of looking for keywords, Jane, I was looking for phrases. So top 10 B2B marketing speakers in the US,
Mm,
or the best AI speakers in the world, or um, if if I'm looking for a speaker for planning marketing conferences, name the top speakers that's relevant to blah 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 blah, the stuff we
got it.
do. So I will try different phrases, and in ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and just try and see if my name would come up. And if my name doesn't come up, the next thing I was like, why didn't Pam Dinner's name show up?
Mm-hmm.
And then can you give me a suggestions so she can optimize, or what she can do to actually make sure the name show up? So I also run, like a specific prompt, like, okay, what can I do to improve my website for AEO? what can Pam do to actually optimize AEO, and what can Pam do not just on the website and also on the third party side, what are the things that she can do. So there was a series of a prompt that being asked, and I and my team like kind of go through the prompt responses and then determine what we can do to actually optimize my website. The thing is, there are so many things AI will recommend to you in terms of what you should do to optimize your AEO. At the end of the day, you have finite resources and budget to do it. So you have to always think, what should you do first? What are some of the low hanging fruit? From my perspective, is my website. I have total control of it, right? I have no control what Gene you're gonna say about me, for example. I have no control, like any kind of media house is going or outlet is going to interview me. Even I pay $2,500, they probably won't. I don't know, whatever,
Yeah.
right? So I focus on what I can control. What I can control is my website. So let me optimize the heck out of it first. And then and by the way, I thought like, you know what? I'm going to check that off. Then I will do something else. It turned out it's a journey. You cannot check it off. You just can't. There's always something that you can add and optimize.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So much work.
So much
much
stuff.
work.
I mean, you have a tremendous depth of experience, breadth of experience, many years at Intel. Things are changing so fast.
So fast. Yeah.
Are there things that you are preparing for, let's say in the next year, because I think beyond that is like, even a year, who knows what it'll look like. How or what would you recommend to marketers? Because they're, and speaking from my own experience, there's maybe this ever-present fear of, am I going to even be relevant? Am I going to get my job taken? AI can do all this. How are you recommending people get ahead of the curve or even like prepare for this huge shift?
Great. So I told everybody the winter is coming. It is. The winter is coming. Honestly, I don't even know if I will have a job. I'm just being very honest and transparent right now. I'm not even sure I will have a job actually, like in the future. But however, this is the key that you have to understand. Like, even if there's a possibility your job will be replaced, that's just assume that. But you know what? This has been happened in the past probably 8 decades. It seems the invention of the steam engine, right? When the industrial revolution started, how many job has come and go? Does that make sense? Like, Ford assembly line and for Model T. Initially, it's a manual labor when they build assembly line, and then they automated, and then a lot of the manual labor got fired, and they actually opened car mechanic shop, across a different U.S. So the jobs will always be terminated due to, say, technology evolution. That is nothing new. It happened by waves. Okay. However, AI is a little bit different because you can do so much more. So then what you need to do is not necessarily thinking about if you have a job or not have a job, because that's not necessarily within your control. So what you need to think about is, okay, what is within my control? The key thing is, one thing: if you don't upskill with AI, you will definitely be dated. So you almost have no choice to know AI, to understand AI, to upskill yourself, with whatever technology is coming. So upskilling is very important, even though there's a risk that you're going to lose your job. I mean, everybody have that risk.
Yeah.
Everyone. Okay, so upskilling is very important. Second thing that you need to think a little bit differently is like, okay, fine. Let's assume in the case that, yes, I can see my company replace me. Then my question to you is, what else can you do? There got to be other things you can do.
Yeah.
What else can you do? What are your other skill set? Is it with the same career path, but you change to a different lane of a similar job within marketing organizations? Or do you have to change your career path completely? You don't have to answer that question, but you should exploring it. Does that make
definitely.
sense, everybody?
Yeah, yeah,
So it's very important that you are looking ahead. You have to do, there's a short term and long term. The short term is you have to upskill. I don't think I don't think that's negotiable. Everyone, you can argue with me. But in the long term, say your job being replaced, you need to think ahead now and say, okay, if that's the case, what should I do a little bit differently? Should I save as much as I can? Should I look into other job, and maybe should I do something completely different? You know, that there's a, what I'm trying to say is there are many options as well.
yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think, I mean, I find personal interest in the upskilling because these capabilities, it's like
Yeah.
stuff that is just to have it done with natural language is just so magical.
It's so it's yes. I actually started to telling I tell a lot of enterprise marketers, you know what, try it. You're not going
Yeah,
to break anything, and you will find that sometimes it can be very helpful, but you have, and but that helpfulness needs to come from, you need to be able to spend some time to ramp yourself.
yeah,
So yeah.
most definitely. Uh, Pam, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your expertise, and your encouragement because I totally agree. Upskilling is critical, and then also asking those other existential questions. What's the best place to learn more about you and connect with you online?
Okay, so I'm actually on all the social media channels, including LinkedIn and Pinterest.
Yeah,
But connect with me on LinkedIn, and that's probably the channel that everybody tend to go to. And you can, if you have any specific questions, you need any kind of training, especially Copilot or even AI talks, reach out to me on pamdinner.com, or just send me a quick email, hello@pamdinner.com, and I check my email, and I also try to answer every single questions that people ask me on LinkedIn and any other social media channels as well. But you can always reach out to me.
amazing. Pam Didner, thank you so much.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.